One of the core memories from my childhood happened around 2013 or 2014 when I went over to a friend's house and we booted up his Xbox 360 and scrolled through Xbox Live Arcade. May you rest in peace. And he wanted to show me a game that at the time made me feel like a rebel with how violent it was. That game was none other than the Behemoth's Next game, with a prototype shown at Comic-Con 2005. It was also dubbed Ye Olde Side-Scroller by John Baez. However, it wouldn't get its actual name until Comic-Con the following year, where they also announced Castle Crashers for Xbox Live Arcade, and then it came out in 2008 to very good reception and was a commercial success. Unfortunately, I never got the complete experience of Castle Crashers since my friend already had a fuck ton of weapons and most characters leveled up, meaning we just blitzed through any level we played. However, I was too young to care and just had a blast beating ass. After the few times we played it though, I never played it again, but I had such a good time that Castle Crashers always just stuck around in the back of my brain, taunting me to come back for just one more session. Just like my ex. It did eventually get ported to the PS3, which I had, but I wasn't keeping up with gaming news at the time, so I had no idea. Good thing years later a remastered version got announced for modern consoles. Yeah, I didn't get that at launch either. However, here I am to satiate that itch in the back of my brain, so let's hack and slash our way through Castle Crashers. The story is practically non-existent. Within the first few seconds of Castle Crashers, some baddies crash into the castle. I'll delete my channel. Said baddies then steal the super precious shiny crystal and kidnap women too, I guess. You then travel across the lands, searching far and wide for the women in crystal while also getting an abundance of jokes that are mostly throwaway. Well, hold on. Shit-propelled deers? Now that's peak comedy. Your adventure will stay varied and interesting for its entire duration, as you can go from being in the midst of a volcano, running through a winter wonderland, to being abducted by aliens, and then settling your differences in a match of volleyball. There's also a good amount of music, a lot of which is pretty catchy. Some songs do repeat throughout levels, but it usually fits, and again, they're bangers, so it was never an issue to me. Surprisingly, I didn't find the boss themes that memorable. They're good in the moment, but after the fights, they kinda just slipped out of my mind because in my opinion, they don't sound as unique as the rest of the soundtrack does. The characters don't have any differences aside from the magic they use and obviously their designs. You'll still go through the same progression of leveling up and building your stats however you see fit, along with occasionally learning new combos, which keeps the combat from getting overly stale. One problem with progression though. Throughout the first half of the game, it feels pretty good and you'll level up at a steady pace. However, in the second half, that progression comes to a crawl as leveling up takes longer and you only get one skill point as opposed to two, which feels backwards. I should get more for doing more work, but I guess not in this economy. I want to go back to the levels just for a moment. In a handful of them, you'll find weapons that each increase and or decrease some stats, and there's so many fucking options to pick from as well. You'll also come across pets, and every single one gives a unique effect. However, it's pretty hard to tell what most of them are until you go to the pet pen where it'll tell you whatever ones you want to know, which is kind of annoying to do each time you acquire a new one. Just a tiny pop-up saying what it does when picking it up would have been nice. Enemies, much like characters, don't have many differences aside from some being larger, but them having new designs depending on the level help them feel fresh regardless. Some combinations of enemies are pretty damn annoying since they'd be able to stun lock me for a bit, which reminded me that this is supposed to be played with co-op, which is fine, but it was upsetting because dying puts you right back at the very beginning of the level and you gotta run through it all again, including cutscenes. It wasn't just annoying combinations of enemies that were, well, annoying. Combos were inconsistent. I would press the buttons to do an air combo, but half the time it just wouldn't bring me in the air. And for some reason I struggled pretty heavily with depth perception. For whatever reason, I just kept whiffing my attacks even towards the end of the game. Not the game's fault, of course, I just found it interesting how this is one of the only games I've had that happen. Now I know I said that the boss music wasn't that memorable, however, the opposite is true for the bosses themselves. There is an insane amount of boss fights that are all somehow super unique from one another. You can go from fighting a dragon to getting blown away by a guy who's sick on the organ, or slicing through the creations of a painter. And most are fun to fight, albeit they're not challenging, but I didn't really want them to be since I was playing this to have some mindless fun. A couple bosses though are annoying. Stupid god goddamn corn constantly burrowing in the ground so I can only get like 3 hits in at a time. I swear to God, if I had a stick, it's going right up your ass and you'll be corn on the cob, buddy, so don't do that shit again. There is more to do in the game than just hacking and slashing your way through levels. You can also hack and slash in a small arena instead. Big kitty! Completing arenas unlocks new characters, some even referencing the Behemoth's past projects. The 360 version had a minigame called All You Can Quaff where you just ate as much food as possible, but I guess someone got too hungry and ate the minigame itself because it never showed up in any other version of the game. It was instead replaced by Back Off Barbarian that has you trying to dodge enemies on a board and different buttons correspond to a direction, which confused me for a bit since it was clearly made in mind for Xbox, so I kept pressing the corresponding color to try to move there. Cursed PlayStation. Then I found out button mashing works surprisingly well and just did that at the cost of my controller's health. I feel like there's a certain magic to Castle Crashers I missed out on by not playing it co-op. The chaos of the game would lend itself well with the right group of people, and even though I've already played through Castle Crashers in its entirety, I may just have to play with friends as it'll probably feel like a brand new game anyway. I'm glad that the Behemoth cherishes all the games they've made and have made them relatively accessible to people. I haven't played any of their other games aside from this and Battle Block, but if those two are anything to go off of, then I'm sure I'll enjoy the rest to an extent. I also appreciate their art style. It's a constant reminder of Newgrounds, which I used to browse a fuck ton as a kid. I'm talking like it doesn't exist anymore, but it's well and alive. I can't wait to see what the Behemoth is cooking up for their next game. I hope it's good, and I'll be sure to cover it if it's up my alley. With all that said, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!